Hello, hello, hello. If you only knew what it took to get onto this stage today. This is an incredible moment and a gift from me to the streets. So in 2022, that's me up there, I left an executive directorship of a regional nonprofit to work in the trenches of homelessness. Basically, I went from working on international think tanks, making more than I could ever imagine, working with natural disasters, doing a lot of different fun and innovative, creative work, to going to the deepest trenches of our neighborhood. Why would I do that? So when I was working in Lane County, we ran the first disaster activation solely for the unhoused in the state of Oregon. When doing that, I realized that there was a lot going on. I had an air-conditioned office, I had an oak desk. Everything that I knew was based on a textbook explanation of what homelessness was. I had never used drugs chaotically. I had never been unhoused myself. So when we got a lot of recognition for the work that we did running this disaster activation, everything that I was basing my information on was book smarts alone. And we all know that book smarts are great. It's a great starting place, but it's not lived experience. It's not the compassion quotient. So from the work that we did with the wildfires, the work with the homeless, I garnered 2 regional gubernatorial task forces. So now I was responsible for representing my area in the state of Oregon to the governor when it came to natural disasters. All of these questions were coming in about, Sarah, what about the homeless? Let's talk more about the homeless. How do we include the homeless in our resiliency plans? And my answer was, to be honest, I don't know. And so what I did was, I shut everything down. I went to our St. Vincent de Paul of Lane County, which is the largest nonprofit in our county, who does all of the sheltering sites. And I said, look, put me in the deepest, darkest recesses of homeless services. And she responded by saying, well, be careful what you ask for. But instead, what I learned was way more than a college education, way more than all the books. And to me, it was a life-changing experience, the fact that I feel almost a bit reborn. So again, back to the shelter, 28,000 square feet. It had 86 8x8 pop-up tents, which you can see. It was an old oil refinery building, and so after COVID, there were so many individuals sheltering in place at different parks. And then we had the International Track and Field Championships. So I'm from Eugene, Oregon. We are Nike Town, home of the Oregon Ducks. And as you know, when we're having large corporate sponsors, big international people, we don't want the homeless in public, right? As one city would say. So what the city of Eugene did was come up with some safe sleep sites and put everybody indoors. That was my new location. So I had a background in hospitality, a background in natural disasters, a background working on a lot of innovation, no background in trauma-informed care, de-escalation, so I had to learn as I went. And in doing so, with 88 individuals, we're talking the gamut of diversity, right? International refugees, foreign refugees, folks who had been unsheltered for over 11 years, some of the worst drug and substance use I had ever seen in my life. Trauma from individuals so strong that they could not even identify as human. One young woman that I worked with, I had to interact with her by asking her, hey Siri, how's your day today? Because she couldn't even feel comfortable in her own skin. So talk about a complete culture shock from this executive directorship, the work that I was doing, now myself working under the federal poverty limit in the line of food boxes with the same people that I'm here to serve, right? So I'm in the shelter, I'm going tent by tent. We're working on some case management. We're looking at getting people stabilized, from stabilization, looking at immediate needs, from immediate needs, getting them health care, from healthcare, looking at substance use, decisions on whether people want to get sober or not, employment or not, and how to move to progress forward to additional sources of traditional housing. In doing so, I had to learn a lot about a lot of different personalities really quick. And so, again, my background in large-scale event planning, I thought, well, this could be potentially a high-end hotel. I know high-end hotels, and I could potentially be the person who goes and just checks on the door, asks everybody how they're doing, can I get you anything? You know, the concierge, how can we work in this fine establishment? So that's what I did. See a need, fill it, see a need, fill it. And as I continued to start looking at the immediate needs of individuals, there was one tent far in the back. This gentleman, his name was Will, and Will never came out of his tent, and he never came out of his tent. Days, weeks progressed, and I started getting really concerned about Will. So I had heard from some individuals that Will was an actor. And so one day I kind of knocked on his tent and I asked, hey, Will, I need some help. And he kind of zipped his tent up and he was like, go on. And I was like, look, one day I want to be at a TED Talk and I want to give a speech, but I don't know how to do it. And I'm a little pudgy right now, and I haven't had voice lessons, and I'm not that well refined, and I have a little bit of low self-esteem, which wasn't a lie. All these things were true. And I said, Will, could you, as an actor, help me get to the TED stage? And straight out of his tent, the next day, he already had a weekly check-in with me. He scheduled the check-ins instead of myself, right? And so it was incredible. He gave me a drawing with a mind map of, hey, you think you're a little pudgy? Let's go to the gym. Hey, you're looking at doing stories? Let's do, I mean, incredible work. So even as I continue with this TED Talk, we look at homelessness in so many different capacities. Trauma, chaos, fear, crime, drug use, trafficking, but the stories like Will, the stories of human compassion, those people who just want to help, and maybe something happened in their life, and he was very reclusive because he was so compassionate and kind, but that little spark got him out and progressing further. The rest of my TED Talk is actually dedicated to Will, so here's part 2. Why Eugene? Eugene is home to more unhoused per capita than any other location in the United States. Who would have thought, right? Everywhere that you look, every corner that you look, mental health, I mean, severe. Mental health funding, some of the lowest in the nation. Drug use, drug trafficking, sex trafficking, all of these different things, extremely severe. Again, lowest in the nation for funding. So we have this interesting dichotomy going on in Eugene, and the numbers don't lie. There's a lot of folks who are in need of home, who are in need of counseling, who are in need of all sorts of different wraparound services in my backyard. So back to my disaster work. 2021, in August, again, another track and field championship, we had a heat dome. Heat dome means it's just an unprecedented time of major heat weather. And so there was triple-digit weather, anywhere between 107 degrees to 110 degrees, but coming from the Pacific Northwest, we're not built like that. We are used to the rain, we're used to the cool climates. We weren't ready for triple-digit weathers, and our activation systems weren't necessarily prepared to activate specifically for those on the street. It's easy to prepare for a heat dome if you have air conditioning. And it's easy to prepare for a heat dome if you have your membership to your country club and you can go swim, right? It is not easy to prepare for a heat dome if you are on the streets, if you don't have shade. I mean, if you are using alcohol, if you are using substances, just being outside alone, that exacerbates the heat. And now imagine you're camped on cement. That cement is even hotter because of the heat, right? So what we did was I was chair of the Lane County COAD, which is Community Organizations Active in Disaster. Our emergency manager, Patience Winningham at the time, reached out to the COAD. We were all volunteers and she said, look, in our last heat dome, we lost lives in the street. I don't want to see that again. Could you guys help? And our answer was resoundingly yes. So St. Vincent de Paul they grabbed their big trucks. Food for Lane County had water and electrolytes. We had these huge burly guys hoisting things in trucks. We had burly guys and not so burly guys hoisting things off trucks. We set up 2 drop sites. one in Eugene, my hometown, and another in Springfield. And then we just put an APB out and said, any volunteer agency, any mutual aid agency, any community anarchist, any evangelic pastor, we don't care who you are, put some water in your car. And then we gridded the town, and we said, okay, you're assigned to this point of the grid, you're assigned to this, and we didn't know what we were doing, so we were literally just driving in little vans and being like, you want some water? Boom, right? And so we kept going and kept going. Well, the more that people heard that we were delivering water, I was getting DMs on Facebook with little pins being dropped, and people were like, hey, I live 20 miles down, turn left at the blackberry bush, turn right on the gravel road, wait a little bit until you might see a swing set and I'll be 2 laps around to the corner, right? And so we did. We tried everything we could. It took a lot of laps on ourselves to get to the location and a lot of learning experience. But what we did find was 0 lives were lost on the street during that activation, right? Hallelujah. So then that's where I was at. So we ran the disaster activation. We got a lot of notoriety, got on these governor's task forces, realized, man, I know a lot, but I know so little. Went into the shelter. All right, so moving forward. Why is this all important? Why disasters? Why homeless? There's a report that came out from the National Alliance to End Homelessness that say unhoused folks are 3 times more likely to die in a natural disaster than us who are housed, right? It's because of resources, it's because of so many different factors. The factors that I've really looked into recently is access to information. Our county, we put out our information on social media, right? What if you don't have a phone? What if a lot of the work that we did with the unhoused was word of mouth or literally staple gunning posters, right? Going back to old school to get information out. Health vulnerabilities, I mean, there's specific camps where the entire camp is stage 4 cancer. You know, folks, we call them death camps. It's a little bit of doom and gloom, dystopian reality, that there are camps in Lane County where unhoused folks who have chronic terminal diseases all live together so that they can nurse each other's wounds until they pass away, right? I mean, if you say, hey, there's gonna be a 3-digit heat dome, why don't you get to the cooling shelter? Someone who's a double amputee is not gonna easily get transported from their location on the train tracks to our fairgrounds where the cooling shelter is. So what we need to do as people with means is come up with other solutions to support these vulnerable communities. Difficulty evacuating, discrimination and inclusion. I was in one meeting at one point where they said that we should have disaster shelters for the housed and disaster shelters for the unhoused. Absolutely not. I mean, even looking at the Red Cross shelters, everybody in one place all needs care because why? It's part of humanity. So although we can't solve homelessness in a single TED Talk, and again, we can't solve how to activate in a disaster in a single TED Talk, I want to offer you one solution, and it's pretty darn cool, and from what I can find, it's some of the first in the world of what we're doing. And what that is an innovation technology platform called What3Words. And What3Words is, it is a global addressing system. It's based in the UK. What they do is they grid the entire world in 3 by 3 meter squares. Each square is assigned 3 words. And then you can input that 3 words into a navigation system, and your Apple navigation or your Google navigation will take you directly to that location within a 3-meter or 10-foot radius. So say you have a tent, and like how I described and all those laps that we had to do to go past the blackberry bramble and the swing set, instead we can ask, hey, do you have a phone? And they say yes, and we go to this site, and the site is locate.what3words.com. That individual goes on their phone, gets that site. Now, pending, we are making the assumption that they do have a phone and they do have internet connectivity in this time of disaster, but small steps to progress, right? Locate.what3words.com, they will give the words like apple, cat, bike. What I can do is I can take those 3 words, Apple Cab Bike, send it to my dispatcher, and within 3 meters, we can get directly to that person. Whether it's hiking, whether it's walking, whether it's biking, whether it's using a car, we can get to those individuals. So what 3 words has been used before for mountain hikers and for people who go up summits, and then they, they get stuck and they have cell reception. It's cut down the time of emergency responders being able to get to someone. So say my car breaks down on a bridge, instead of being like, oh, I'm down at this bridge, kind of at this corner, the emergency manager can be like, what's your what 3 words? And I can give it. And so that ambulance or that fire truck can get to you as quickly as possible. So emergencies, rescue missions, even in times of war, when you have to extract someone or help someone, what 3 words was used in Afghanistan when we were pulling people out of Afghanistan. It's also recently been used at Glastonbury, the festival, because so many people camp at festivals. And so people were using what 3 words to specifically address their tents. Now, if we can address tents of folks with means, why not address folks without means too? And what does that mean? If someone gets swept, we can find them easier. Case managers can get to them. Health outreach workers can get to them. All these different things, instead of taking steps backwards, we can now move forward through this free platform. I'm just so excited. There is nothing I want more in life to see vulnerable communities, specifically the unhoused, supported in times of disaster, because this is the focus that we have to have. When we talk about resilience, when we talk about preparedness and preparedness planning, we need to include folks on the street in that planning as well. What 3 words is the way to do it? Thank you.